Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Akram and you're watching Knowledge 360. In the previous video, we had discussed about foreign table in PostgreSQL database, and in this video, we are going to discuss about dependency tracking in PostgreSQL. So PostgreSQL maintains dependency tracking between objects so that the accidental dropping of any object can be prevented. The dependency can be between tables, views, functions, procedures, and so on. So if an object is dropped, PostgreSQL ensures that dependent objects either preserved or removed accordingly. First, we'll see the dependency tracking using foreign key in case of tables. So for that, we create two tables. One is product table and one is child table called orders. So we create table products. The product table is created. Now we create a table called orders with foreign key of product number that references to the products table. So now if we attempt to drop the product table, so it will not be dropped because the product table is dependent on other objects. So let's try to drop it. So it was not dropped and we got an error that it says that the table is dependent on other table other objects. So for that, what we can do, we can use the cascade option. So the cascade option will drop the table, but it will not drop the child table, that is the dependent objects. It will only drop the foreign key which is dependent on the object. So let's try to drop the products table again, but with cascade option this time. The table is dropped and also we can see that drop cascades to constraint. This constraint is also from order table is also dropped, not the table. So we can show you. So here we can see the orders table is present but the products table is dropped because when we performed the cascade option, it dropped the table along with the foreign key that was associated with the orders table. So to prevent the accidental dropping of objects, PostgreSQL by default uses the restrict mode. So either we can mention the restrict keyword explicitly or we can simply ignore it because PostgreSQL by default implement it. So when we want to restrict the dropping of a table when there is a dependency, so we can use the drop table products then restrict. So this command will fail if the dependency exists. So let's try to drop the table now with restrict on. So here we got the error that dependency exists and it cannot be dropped. But what will happen when we drop the orders table, say for example, because we are going to drop the dependency, and now if we drop the products table with restrict mode on, it will be able to drop because there is no dependent objects that is present in the database with products table. So now when we perform the drop of a products table, it was done successfully because there is no dependent objects. So now let's see how we can drop multiple objects using the drop command in one statement. So when we drop multiple tables that are interdependent or they have dependent objects, so it can be dropped without using the cascade option. So here we know that we have created products and table called orders that are interdependent because we have a foreign key that is created in the orders table which references to the products table. So now without using the cascade option, we can still drop the tables when we provide them in one statement separated by comma. So let's try to drop the tables. So the tables are dropped and we can verify that by refreshing this section. So now we can see that tables are dropped and here we didn't use the cascade option. This was successful because there was no external dependencies exist because the only dependency was the dependency of foreign key between the tables. So in case say for example these tables are used in another function or a trigger function, so in that case this won't work and for that we need to use the cascade option. This works only when the dependency is between the tables itself. Now let's see how we can track the dependency of functions. So functions can be depend on tables or types, but PostgreSQL does not always track the table dependencies inside the function bodies. So for example, the first example we'll see in the function dependent on type. So for that one type we'll create. So we are creating one type called rainbow where we have a few color names. So let's create the type first. The type is created. Now let's create a table that is dependent on this type called rainbow. So the table my colors is also created. Now we create a function called get color node. and where the parameter is rainbow type and it returns the text value. So let's create the function. So the function is created. Now if we try to drop the rainbow type, which we know that is dependent on the table called my colors and also dependent on the function called get color node. So let's try to drop the type called rainbow. So we can see that it was not dropped and we got an error because we know the type is dependent on table and also it has dependency in the function. So in the second example, we'll see the function dependent on table, that is the tracked versus untracked option. The function above does not track the dependencies on my colors table because it was not written standard SQL format. Here we can see. So what will happen when we write it in the SQL standard format? So we'll create that function called get color node again, but this time we'll use the SQL standard. So let's create the function. The function is created now, and now if we try to drop the table called my colors, so let's see what will happen. It will again give the error, and it says that the get color node cannot be dependent, and it has dependent objects of my colors, so it was not dropped. So here we saw that the table was not dropped because there is a dependency in the function. So this is how dependency tracking works in PostgreSQL. So PostgreSQL prevents dropping of objects with active dependencies, and we need to use cascade option to remove the dependency automatically when we drop the objects. And functions track types but may not track tables unless written in SQL standard format, and we need to use the restrict to enforce the safe dropping. But by default, PostgreSQL implements the restrict mode on before dropping the objects. So this was all about dependency tracking in PostgreSQL. If the video was helpful, do like the video and subscribe the channel to get the notifications for upcoming videos. In the next video, we'll see the data manipulation in PostgreSQL, where we see the inserting data options in PostgreSQL database. So let's meet in the next video. Till then, take care. Bye bye.